I was an ordinary gardener. Until the princess invited me to her chamber, Elia's ward had never planned to leave Earth. He had wanted a small life, quiet soil, real rain, the kind of work where results came slowly and honestly, but Earth no longer had room for small lives. When the great cities burned their last green zones to feed reactors, Elias signed the off-world labor contract without reading the fine print. He was listed as an agricultural support worker, a polite term for someone who handled plants in places where plants did not want to live. That was how he ended up aboard the Imperial Station of the Velari Dominion, orbiting a pale yellow star far from human space. The station was enormous. It looked like a floating crown made of silver metal and glowing rings. Inside, everything was clean, perfect, and cold. The Velari believed perfection meant control. Every corridor had exact temperature. Every light was calculated. Even the air moved on schedule. Elias worked in the lowest level of the royal gardens, not the ones visitors saw. These gardens existed only because tradition demanded them. The Velari were not plant eaters. They did not enjoy flowers. To them, gardens were symbols, nothing more. Most of the plants Elias cared for were dying. The soil was imported, sterile, lifeless. It was fed by machines that measured nutrients down to the smallest unit. The Velari scientists said it was flawless. Elias could tell it was wrong within his first hour. He knelt in the dirt, pressed his bare fingers into it, and felt nothing. No warmth, no movement, no life. Dead soil, he whispered. The automated system sprayed liquid nutrients on schedule, but the plants grew thin and weak. Leaves yellowed, roots failed to spread. The system responded by increasing output. The plants responded by dying faster. Elias did not argue with the overseers. He did not send reports. He simply began to work. He smuggled scraps of organic waste from the lower recycling units. He crushed them into the soil. He adjusted watering times by minutes instead of seconds. He scratched small channels into the dirt with his hands so air could reach the roots. Most importantly, he waited. The Velari hated waiting. Days passed, then weeks. The first sign was a single leaf that did not turn yellow, then another. Then a flower bloomed in a corner where nothing had grown before. The automated sensors flagged it as an error. The overseers ignored it, but someone else noticed. Princess Sarilith of the Velari stood at the edge of the upper royal garden, staring down through the transparent floor panels. Below her, the ceremonial plants were greener than they had been in decades. The readings made no sense. The station had suffered 3 power fluctuations that month, 2 atmospheric recalibrations, 1 minor hull breach repaired too slowly. According to projections, the gardens should have failed completely. Instead, they stabilized. She turned to her chief scientist, an elder Velari with silver markings along his crest. "Explain," she said. "The systems are operating within parameters," he replied. "Any variation is statistical noise." Sarilith's eyes did not leave the green below. "Noise does not bloom," she said. She requested a list of all personnel assigned to the gardens. Most names meant nothing to her. Then she saw one marked with a different origin code. Human, Elia's ward. She knew of humans, everyone did, the Deathworld survivors, fragile bodies. Stubborn minds, a species that should not have made it off their home planet but somehow did. She ordered surveillance review. The footage showed Elias working slowly, often with his hands instead of tools. He ignored automated alerts. He paused often, simply watching the plants. Once, during a scheduled nutrient spray, he manually shut the system down and watered by hand. That act alone should have earned punishment. Instead, the plants near him flourished. Sarilith felt something she had not felt in years: curiosity. Below, Elias wiped sweat from his forehead and leaned back on his heels. The air here was warmer than the rest of the station. He had made it that way, just enough to remind the plants of sunlight. "You're doing better," he murmured to a row of blue-leafed shrubs. "Told you'd figure it out." A shadow fell across the garden. He looked up. Imperial guards stood above the transparent floor. Their armor shimmered with status markings. This was not routine inspection. His stomach tightened. Moments later, a voice echoed through the chamber. "Elias Ward, you are requested for audience." He froze. Audience meant nobles. Nobles meant trouble. I'm on shift," he said carefully. "The request stands," the guard replied. "Prepare yourself." As Elias followed them through corridors he had never been allowed to enter, whispers spread through the station systems. A human gardener summoned upward. Rumors bloomed faster than the plants. He was led into a chamber unlike any he had seen. The walls curved like living crystal. Soft light flowed instead of shining. The air felt alive. Princess Sarilith stood alone near a living tree grown from alien biomatter. It pulsed gently, synced with the station's core systems. She turned as Elias entered. He bowed awkwardly, unsure of the correct angle. "My princess," he said. "You tend the lower gardens," she replied. Her voice was calm, controlled. "Explain why they live." Elias blinked. "Because I stopped killing them," he said before thinking. Silence followed. The guards stiffened. Sarilith raised a hand, stopping them. "Continue," she said. Elias swallowed. He looked at the living tree beside her. Even here, even in the most perfect place on the station, he saw the same problem. "It's not about feeding them more," he said slowly. "It's about letting them adapt. Your systems try to force life into a shape. Life doesn't like that." The princess studied him closely. "Our science has preserved this empire for 10,000 cycles," she said. "And Earth science destroyed mine," Elias replied softly. "Until we learned better." She did not react with anger. That alone surprised the guards. "What did you change?" she asked. "I broke the rules," Elias said honestly. "I added waste. I allowed imbalance. I let the soil remember how to be alive." Sarilith turned toward the living tree. Its pulse flickered. "The station has suffered failures," she said. "Yet areas under your care stabilize faster. Explain." Elias hesitated. Then he spoke. "Because when systems fail, life takes over if you let it," he said. "But if you control everything, there's nothing left to save you." The chamber grew very quiet. Far below, an alarm echoed faintly through the station. Another system fluctuation. The tree beside Sarilith pulsed again, then steadied. Her eyes widened slightly. She looked back at the human gardener, standing nervous and tired in borrowed clothes. "Remain here," she said. The guards shifted, confused. "I wish to understand," Sarilith continued, "how a species labeled fragile keeps surviving where stronger ones fail." Elias exhaled slowly. "Because we expect things to break," he said, "and we learn how to live anyway." Outside the chamber, the station's sensors recorded something impossible. For the first time in centuries, the royal gardens were not merely maintained. They were growing. And deep within the imperial core, the princess of the Velari began to realize that the future of her empire might depend on a human who listened to dirt. The room given to him was larger than his old quarters, but it felt smaller. The walls were smooth and pale, without cracks or stains. No soil, no smell of leaves, just quiet perfection. He lay on the resting platform, staring at the ceiling as soft light shifted slowly, designed to calm the mind. It did not work. His words kept repeating in his head. "I broke the rules." He wondered if honesty had been a mistake. In most places, it always was. Outside the chamber, the station continued to hum. Machines adjusted. Systems recalculated. Somewhere deep within the core, small imbalances corrected themselves, not by force but by response. No one noticed that yet. At first cycle light, guards returned. This time their posture was different, less threat, more caution. "You will come," one said. Elias followed, heart steady but heavy. He knew this place now. Power lived here. Decisions made in these halls changed worlds. Princess Sarilith waited near the same living tree. It looked healthier today. Its surface shimmered softly, and its pulse was slower, steadier. "You altered nothing here," she said without turning. "No," Elias replied, "I wouldn't dare." "Yet it stabilizes," she said. She faced him. "That means the change is systemic." Elias nodded. "Life connects," he said. "You change one part, the rest responds." She studied him carefully. "You will walk with me," she said. They moved through corridors reserved for royalty. No guards followed closely. That alone made Elias uneasy. They entered the upper gardens. These were the ones visitors admired. Tall alien plants curved toward artificial light. Flowers glowed faintly. Everything looked perfect, but Elias saw the truth. "They're tired," he said quietly. Sarilith stopped. "Explain." "They're surviving," he corrected. "Not living." She gestured for him to continue. Elias knelt beside a flowering stalk and gently touched the soil surface. He did not dig, he only felt. "It's too clean," he said. "Nothing breaks down, nothing feeds the next cycle." "Our waste systems remove contamination," she replied. "On Earth," Elias said, "we learned too late that waste is only waste if you refuse to see its value." Sarilith straightened slowly. "You are saying our perfection is weakness." "Yes," Elias said, "because it leaves no room for recovery." Before she could respond, a sharp tone echoed through the garden, an alert, not loud enough for panic but serious. A small projection appeared in the air, terraforming Colony 12, atmospheric instability, crop failure. Time to collapse, 16 standard hours. Seralith's crest markings darkened slightly. That colony has the best systems available, she said. They always do, Elias replied softly. She turned to him. You will come. Within the hour, Elias was aboard a transport vessel heading toward the distant colony world. The team with him was elite. Scientists, engineers, security officers, all Velari, all watched him with guarded eyes. One spoke openly. If this fails, human, the scientist said, your presence will be blamed. Elias nodded. That's fair. The planet came into view. It was brown and gray, wrapped in unstable cloud bands. The colony domes glowed weakly on the surface. Inside the main dome, tension filled the air. Screens showed falling oxygen levels and failing crops. Engineers adjusted controls rapidly. Increase nutrient flow, one ordered. It's already at maximum, another replied. Elias watched quietly. Stop, he said. They ignored him. The crops inside the dome were tall but brittle, leaves curled inward, roots shallow. They're suffocating, Elias said louder. A security officer stepped toward him. You will not interfere. Princess Seralith's voice echoed through the channel. He will speak. All eyes turned. Elias swallowed. Your system is fighting the planet, he said. You need to let the planet fight back. The scientist scoffed. That makes no sense, one said. Then let me show you, Elias replied. Against protocol, Seralith granted him temporary control of a secondary agricultural zone. A small one, considered already lost. Elias removed his gloves and stepped into the soil. It was compacted, overfed, exhausted. He shut down half the nutrient injectors. Alarms blared. You are killing them, a scientist shouted. Elias dug trenches with simple tools. He opened air paths. He mixed dead plant matter back into the soil. He adjusted lighting to mimic irregular cycles. Hours passed. The crops wilted further. Security raised their weapons. Then slowly roots spread. Sensors blinked. Carbon exchange improved. Oxygen stabilized. Moisture balanced. One by one, alerts turned green. The colony dome did not return to perfection. It returned to balance. Silence filled the command center. The scientist who had mocked Elias stared at the data. This violates every model we have. Yes, Elias said, because your models assume control equals survival. Princess Seralith appeared on the main display. Her gaze was intense. You risked execution, she said. I risked failure, Elias replied. Execution was already on the table. She considered that. Back on the Imperial station, word spread quickly. A human gardener had altered a dying colony with his hands. Some called it sabotage. Others whispered miracles. The council did not whisper. Summons were issued. Elias stood once more before power, but this time the chamber was full. Elder Velari lined the hall. Their markings glowed with agitation. You have tampered with Imperial systems, one accused. You have influenced the princess, another said. I repaired what was broken, Elias replied calmly. You broke sacred protocols. They were killing the colony, he said. A wave of tension moved through the chamber. Princess Seralith stood and raised her hand. Observe, she said. A projection filled the hall. The colony's latest data, stable, recovering, growing stronger by the hour. The elders fell silent. This human did not weaken us, Seralith continued. He revealed our blindness. One elder stepped forward. And what if his methods fail elsewhere? Elias spoke before she could. Then you learn, he said. Like we did, failure isn't the end, refusing to adapt is. The chamber was still. Far below, in the forgotten lower gardens, new growth pushed through soil that had been dead for centuries. And across the station, systems once rigid began to respond with flexibility. The Empire did not change that day. But for the first time in a very long time, it bent instead of breaking. If you want, say, write part 3, and I will continue with the same length, same style, and rising tension. The station felt different after the colony survived. Elias noticed it first in the air. The flow was not perfectly timed anymore. There were small changes, pauses that allowed pressure to equalize naturally. It was subtle, but to him it felt like breathing instead of pumping. Others noticed too. The Velari scientists did not like it. Meetings grew longer. Voices became sharper. Data screens filled with arguments instead of answers. Everywhere Elias walked, eyes followed him. Some were curious, some were afraid, some were angry. He returned to the lower gardens when he was allowed. The plants were stronger now. Roots reached deeper, leaves spread wider, the soil smelled alive. "You're not supposed to do that," one junior technician muttered as Elias worked. "Neither were you," Elias replied calmly, nodding toward a patch of green growing where nothing had survived before. The technician said nothing more. Princess Saralith watched all of this from above. She did not interfere, but she listened. Reports came in daily. Minor systems across the station were stabilizing without direct intervention. Energy spikes softened. Structural stress reduced. The Empire had always believed control was strength. Now control was loosening and strength was increasing. That frightened many. The first official accusation came quietly. Elias was summoned to a scientific council chamber, not the Grand Hall. This one was smaller, colder. No guards, just minds sharpened for conflict. "You are creating dependency," one elder scientist said. "On what?" Elias asked. "Life, you make us reliant on human methods," another said. Elias shook his head. "These aren't human methods," he said. "They're natural ones. Humans just learned them the hard way." "And yet you are the center of this shift," the elder replied. "Remove you and what remains understanding," Elias said, "if you let it." They did not like that answer. Soon after, systems began to fail again, not by accident. In one agricultural ring, nutrient injectors were locked at maximum output. Crops began to yellow within hours. In another section, airflow was sealed to perfect regulation. Plants wilted. Elias was blamed. "He has disrupted balance," reports claimed. "His interference causes instability." Princess Saralith ordered a full investigation. Elias was escorted to the affected sectors. He knelt, examined the soil, the roots, the air. "This was done on purpose," he said quietly. "Proof," demanded a security officer. Elias pointed to the data logs. "Someone forced perfection," he said. "Nature never does that." The logs were sealed shortly after. That night, Elias was confined to his quarters. No explanation, no charges, just silence. He sat on the edge of the resting platform, hands on his knees. For the first time since leaving Earth, doubt pressed heavily on him. Maybe this was as far as he could go. Maybe survival did not mean acceptance. Across the station, Princess Saralith argued with her council. "They fear losing authority," one advisor said. "They fear losing certainty," she replied. "Those are not the same." They accuse the human of manipulation. "He manipulates nothing," Saralith said. "He listens." A deeper alarm interrupted them, not local, system-wide. Core biosupport fluctuation. The living tree in Saralith's chamber shuddered. Its pulse spiked erratically. She froze. This tree was bonded to the station's life support matrix. If it failed, the station would suffer cascading collapse. Engineers rushed in. "The core cannot compensate," one said. "It is locked into rigid response patterns." Saralith's eyes narrowed. "Bring Elias," she said. Guards hesitated. "He is confined." "Bring him," she repeated. Elias was escorted through emergency-lit corridors. He felt the change immediately. The air was too even, too forced. The living tree stood rigid, its surface dull. Elias approached slowly. "They tightened everything," he said. "Didn't they?" "No one admits it," Saralith replied. Elias placed his palm against the tree. It felt strained, like a muscle locked in place. "You can't order life to be stable," he said. "You have to let it adjust." "What must be done?" she asked. "Turn off the override systems," Elias said. "That would risk everything," an engineer protested. "They're already risking everything," Elias replied. Saralith looked at the tree, then at the data, then at the human. "Do it," she said. Overrides disengaged. Alarms screamed. The tree's pulse became chaotic. Then slowly it softened. Its surface shimmered again. Color returned. Across the station, pressure normalized. Energy loads balanced, not perfectly, but safely. Silence followed. Elias stepped back, exhausted. "That was the last proof," Saralith said quietly. "Proof of what?" Elias asked. "That our empire has mistaken stillness for strength." The council convened at once. This time the hall was full. Accusations flew openly now. "The human endangered the core. The human bypassed authority. The human must be removed." Elias stood in the center, calm but tired. Princess Saralith rose. "You accuse him of what we did," she said. "We forced rigidity until life nearly failed." An elder stepped forward. "Then you would abandon our principles?" "No," Saralith said. "I would evolve them." She turned to Elias. "You said humans survived because you expected things to break." "Yes," Elias said, "because they always do." The council chamber fell silent. Far away, the colony world sent new data. Native plants began to grow beyond the domes, adapting to the planet naturally. The Empire faced a choice: control or survival. And standing quietly between those two paths was an ordinary human gardener, hands still stained with soil, waiting to see if the galaxy was finally ready to learn how to live. If you want, say, write part 4, and I will continue with the same style, same simplicity, and even higher stakes. The council did not decide that day. Instead, they delayed. For the Velari, delay was a weapon. It allowed fear to grow. It allowed stories to change shape. It allowed blame to move quietly from system to individual. Elias felt it in small ways at first. Access doors took longer to open. His permissions were questioned. Guards followed him again, not openly hostile, but no longer neutral. Scientists who once argued with him now avoided his eyes. The lower gardens were sealed for inspection. That hurt more than the stairs. Elias stood outside the transparent barrier, watching plants he had helped revive continue to grow without him. The soil held. The balance remained. That was some comfort. Princess Sarilith noticed everything. "They are isolating you," she said during a private meeting. "They're afraid," Elias replied. "Fear looks for a target. You could leave," she said. "I could arrange safe passage back to human space." Elias smiled faintly. "And leave the lesson unfinished." Sarilith studied him. "You know this may end badly." "Yes," he said. "That's how most important things start." Pressure built across the station. A minor famine was reported in a distant Velari agricultural ring world. Not total collapse, but enough to frighten citizens. The council blamed transition instability. Whispers blamed the human. Then came the formal charge. Elias Ward was accused of systemic interference, unauthorized alteration of imperial technology, and ideological contamination. The trial would be public. The hall filled with elders, nobles, scientists, and observers from allied species. Many had never seen a human in person. They expected something dangerous. They saw a tired man in plain clothes. Elias stood alone in the center circle, no restraints, no weapons, just dirt still under his fingernails. An elder spoke first. "You claim our methods are flawed," the elder said. "No," Elias replied. "I claim they are incomplete. You claim superiority of human philosophy." "No," Elias said again. "I claim humility." Murmurs spread. "You altered colonies without permission." "I saved them," Elias said. "You endangered the core." "I freed it," he replied. The council pressed harder. Why should the Velari trust a species known for destroying its own world? Elias did not answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice was calm. "Because we survived that mistake," he said, "and we learned why it happened." A projection appeared. Data from Earth. Old images, cities drowning in smog, crops failing, then later images, smaller cities, green corridors, slow recovery. "We learned that control without listening creates collapse," Elias said, "and that life always answers force with resistance." An elder scoffed. "Poetry?" "No," Elias said. "History." Princess Sarilith stood. "Enough," she said. "You will hear the final evidence." She gestured. A star map filled the hall, several worlds highlighted. Formerly sterile planets now showing early biological response. Not terraformed by machines, adapted by guided balance. "These worlds are stabilizing," Sarilith said, "using principles Elias introduced, not human tools, not Velari dominance, cooperation." The hall grew quiet. One elder rose slowly. His markings glowed with deep authority. "And if he is wrong in the long term," Sarilith answered, "then we adjust. That is the point." Silence stretched. Then alarms cut through the chamber, not local, imperial network-wide, multiple systems failing at once. A deliberate act, security reports flooded in. Override commands had been forced across several sectors, locking systems into rigid states. The same pattern as before, but larger. Sabotage. "If the human did this," an elder shouted, "we must act now." "I did not," Elias said. Sarilith turned sharply. "Who has access?" A name appeared in the data stream. One of the senior council scientists, architect of the original perfection systems. "He would rather see collapse than change," Elias said quietly. The station shuddered. Power dipped. Life support strained. There was no time for debate. Elias stepped forward. "Let me help," he said. "Unrestrained," a council member protested. "He is already our only option," Sarilith replied. She made a decision then, one that would define her rule. She removed the authority seals from the core systems and transferred emergency access to Elias. Gasps echoed through the hall. "You give a human control of the Empire's heart," an elder whispered. No, Sarilith said. I give life a chance. Elias moved fast. He did not issue commands. He removed them. Override locks disengaged. Automated systems were set to adaptive mode. Feedback loops were reopened. Waste cycles were redirected instead of erased. Across the station, alarms peaked, then began to fade. Systems did not return to perfect symmetry. They stabilized. The living tree in the core chamber glowed brighter than ever before. The sabotage failed. Security forces detained the scientist responsible. He did not resist. I tried to save us, he said as he was taken away. So did he, Sarilith replied, watching Elias. Hours later, the station rested. The council reconvened in silence. The elders looked at the data, at the living worlds, at the human who had just prevented collapse without taking control. The same elder who had spoken earlier bowed his head slightly. You do not rule, he said to Elias. You guide. Elias shook his head. I don't even do that, he said. I listen. Sarilith stepped forward. Then let the Empire listen with you, she said. The council voted. Not unanimously, but decisively. Elias Ward was cleared of all charges. More than that, a new position was created, one that had never existed in Velari history. Guardian of balance, not a ruler, not a scientist, a bridge. Elias returned to the gardens that day, the lower ones. He knelt and pressed his hands into the soil again. It was warm, alive. Sarilith watched from above. The Empire had not lost control. It had gained resilience, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that the greatest strength of humanity was never power. It was the courage to let life be imperfect and still keep going. If you want, say, write part 5, and I will complete the story with a strong HFY ending. Same style, same simplicity, same impact. The change did not happen all at once. That was something Elias understood better than anyone. Empires liked moments, declarations, ceremonies, clear endings and beginnings. Life did not work that way. Life moved slowly, adjusted quietly, and survived through small choices made again and again. After the council's decision, the station did not celebrate. There were no banners, no public speeches, only new procedures, subtle at first, spreading through the systems like roots through soil. Elias returned to his work. That surprised many. He was now Guardian of Balance, a title that sounded large and powerful, but he still wore the same clothes. He still walked the same paths. He still knelt in the dirt. The difference was that others knelt beside him. Velari scientists came at first out of duty. They watched closely, recording everything. They expected secrets, techniques, instructions. Elias gave them none. He asked questions instead. What happens if we wait? What does the plant do when you stop forcing it? What changes when you remove one control instead of adding another? At first, they were uncomfortable. Waiting felt like failure. Not acting felt like weakness. Then they saw results. A hydro-ring station on the edge of the Empire suffered a meteor strike that should have caused cascading loss. Instead of locking systems down, adaptive protocols allowed pressure to shift naturally. Damage remained local. The station survived. A food world experienced climate drift. Instead of resetting conditions, engineers guided native species to adapt alongside imported crops. Yield decreased briefly, then increased beyond projections. Reports spread. So did resistance. Some nobles complained that the empire looked less perfect. Some citizens worried that visible variation meant decline. The old belief ran deep. Princess Sarilith addressed the concerns calmly. Perfection does not endure, she said. Balance does. She visited the gardens often. Not as a ruler inspecting property, but as a learner. She listened as Elias explained simple things. Roots need air, he said once. Yes, she replied thoughtfully. So do societies. He smiled at that. Beyond Velari space, others noticed. Allied species sent observers. At first politely curious, then quietly urgent. Their own systems were failing, their own methods rigid. They asked for technology. Elias refused. They asked for formulas. He shook his head. Finally, they asked for guidance. That he accepted. Humanity re-entered the galactic stage not with fleets, but with patience. Human ecologists, engineers, and planners were invited to worlds once considered too broken to save. They did not arrive as masters. They arrived as helpers. On one dust world, a human team worked alongside Velari specialists and native species. They shared stories of failure, of cities lost, of lessons learned too late. The planet responded. Slowly, years passed. The Velari Empire did not shrink, it strengthened. Not through conquest, but through resilience. Worlds adapted, systems learned. Failure became information instead of disaster. Elias grew older, his hair grayed, his hands grew rougher. He still worked in the gardens, though now they were larger, more complex, alive in ways the Empire had never allowed before. One evening, he sat beneath a tall, flowering plant grown from mixed species. Alien leaves and earth vines intertwined naturally. Princess Sarilith joined him. "You changed history," she said. Elias looked at the soil. "History was already changing," he replied. "I just stopped getting in its way." She watched the plant sway gently in irregular air currents. "The council wants statues," she said. Elias laughed softly. "Tell them to plant trees instead," she smiled. Beyond the station, a message arrived from Earth, not from governments, from communities. They had heard stories, how humanity's mistakes had become lessons that saved worlds. They did not ask for credit. They asked to help more. Elias read the message slowly. His eyes stung. He remembered the burned green zones, the dying soil, the quiet decision to leave. He had not saved Earth, but Earth had saved the galaxy. One final crisis came years later. A distant star began to destabilize. Radiation threatened multiple inhabited systems. Evacuation was impossible at scale. Old doctrine demanded shields and force fields. New doctrine asked a different question. How does the system want to change? By adjusting planetary atmospheres gradually, redistributing populations, and allowing ecosystems to migrate instead of resist, disaster was avoided. Loss occurred, but extinction did not. The galaxy learned something important that day. Strength was not in holding ground. It was in knowing when to move. On his last day in the gardens, Elias could not kneel easily anymore. A group of young Velaryon humans worked nearby, their hands dirty, their voices calm. Princess Sarilith stood beside him. "They will remember you," she said. Elias shook his head. "They'll remember the lesson," he said. "That's enough." He placed his palm on the soil one last time. It was warm, alive. The Empire continued long after Elias' ward was gone, not perfect, but enduring. And whenever worlds faced collapse, someone would ask a simple human question that changed everything. What happens if we let life try that was humanity's gift? Not dominance, not power, but the wisdom earned by surviving their own mistakes and choosing, again and again, to keep growing.